Hi, this is Swapnil Bhartiya, and we are here at KubeCon in Seattle, and today we have with us both Heptio and VMware. So can you please, introduce yourself? It's hard for me to tell which one is VMware, which one is Heptio. So please introduce yourself.
Happy to. So my name is Paul Fazzone. I'm the general manager of the cloud native team at VMware.
And my name is Craig McLuckie. I was the founder and CEO of Heptio, and we very recently joined VMware, and I'll be joining Paul's team.
So when we look at the whole consolidation that is happening in the market, CoreOS was acquired by Red Hat, and then Red Hat got acquired by IBM, and now Heptio thing happened. So first of all, when you look at the ecosystem or maturity of Kubernetes, what is your take out of this consolidation that is happening?
So we're at the point where, which I think is good for our customers, Kubernetes is starting to approach the point of getting a little boring. And with that comes a lot of the enterprise last mile challenges that many enterprise organizations have. If you're a financial services institution, you've got to deal with audit, compliance, security. So there's a lot of heavy lifting left to do. It's a lot more boring than I think a lot of the early stage challenges that the project had got to take on. But I think the project to this point has set a great framework with the community efforts and the user community participation, the vendor participation. It's set a great foundation for enterprise organizations for the next few years to be able to take advantage of it for the modernization of not only their infrastructure, delivering a truly multi-cloud top layer of modern infrastructure, but also how they develop and deliver their and operationalize their modern applications.
Yeah, so from my side, everything Paul said, I think stands. I think the attention and intensity of consolidation we're seeing in this market is really a testament to the value that Kubernetes is bringing to the enterprise space. I've been in technology for quite some time, and I've seldom seen a technology become this widely accepted and adopted. I think it's not because Kubernetes just solves one problem. I think it really hits on a couple of critical points that are incredibly germane to mainstream enterprises, and it's enabled Heptio as an organization to, we've been in a situation where we've been selling to some of the biggest organizations in financial services, some of the biggest telcos, some of the biggest retailers and manufacturers, and that's not because we're a particularly sophisticated organization. It's really a testament to the strength of this technology that we represent and support and are operationalizing. And for me, that value is really cut across three lines. Like, one is multi-cloud is real. We're living in a world where it used to be a one-horse race, and it's very clear that we're now moving into an environment where both Microsoft and Google are bringing a tremendous amount of resource to bear to make it competitive, so that the world is not falling into this one space. And a lot of enterprise customers are now getting to a point where it's no longer something they consider as a nice thing to have. They have to have a multi-cloud strategy. A lot of their procurement groups are requiring them to maintain relationship with multiple vendors. Their regulators are starting to look at the systematic risk that's being introduced into the system by overexposure to one CSP. And that's changing the dynamics. And Kubernetes plays so well into that space, creating this incredibly ubiquitous framework that works everywhere. The second thing I think that is very real right now is the reality for a lot of organizations today in the enterprise space is that their most scarce and most valuable resource is the enterprise developer. There are so many enterprise technology companies that are trying to become, traditional enterprise companies that are trying to become technology companies. My friend Joe always likes to say, we're at a fascinating time where you have Tesla, which is essentially a software company figuring out how to be a car company, competing with someone like Ford, who's a car company trying to figure out how to become a technology company. And this is playing out everywhere. You look at the telcos today and the challenges they face deploying 5G into their environments, the complexity and pressure that's going to be put on the data plane. There's no practical solutions. They need better ways to deploy technology. Look at the banks and the challenges they're facing from the challenger banks. These organizations that are very technically progressive, that are bringing disruptive ways to think about development and execution to the space, they have to be able to compete. And Kubernetes and a lot of the ancillary technologies are not just enabling these folks to build things in multiple clouds, but they're enabling their developers to become more intrinsically competitive, to iterate and evolve at the rate of the business. And then the third thing, and I don't want to kind of overstate this, but resource efficiency. You look at the work that VMware's done on-prem, and they've done an amazing job of taking a single piece of infrastructure and carving it up and allocating it out to a broad array of entities within your organization, so that all of the value associated with oversubscription comes back to you as the consumer. Now, when you look at what happens in cloud, the cloud providers are doing that, but you're paying for it, right? So you buy 1 unit of CPU, 1 unit of RAM. If you consume it, you pay a certain amount of money. If you don't consume it, you pay the same amount of money. The cloud providers are oversubscribing it, but none of that value is coming back to you. So what VMware did on-prem, someone has to do in the cloud. And one of the things that we see Kubernetes consistently being used for is driving up the subscription level of the basic infrastructure service offering, and returning a lot of that value back to the customers instead of returning to the CSPs, which is what their own oversubscription strategies offer.
Well, that was, yeah.
And so you bring those 3 things together and you have magic.
I will just go back to the point that you made about every company has to be a technology company. I think, these days every have to be software company, Tesla is less about the engine. We don't even know what engine is. It's all about machine learning, what they're doing. And even if you look at, bioengineering, I mean, I'm wearing Apple Watch, when its heartbeat is not about, it's all about how software is, collecting the data and then sending it. So it's just, I think software is going to be, every company will have to be a software company. It doesn't matter your bank or, medical science or education, with VR coming in, it will be all about, robots will be teaching us. So that's the word we are moving in. So that's, true. Going back to the point of multi-cloud that you talked about, when we talk about multi-cloud, we mostly talk about the private on-prem or versus going to cloud. But also sometimes you may like something which is good in Azure versus GKE or versus AWS. So what about moving your workload among these public clouds as well?
Good. Well, I mean, from my side, it's pretty simple, right?
No, is that also matters when you talk about multi-cloud?
No, look, let's just tear it down. So the starting point is this. We're at a point where we have to choose whether we're going back into the mainframe era or not. Like I spent a lot of time with big financial service organizations, and you start tracing through the thread of a lot of these systems, and sooner or later you find a mainframe, right? And do they like being in the mainframe world? No. Like, how many folks are working on mainframe retirement projects? Like, an inordinate amount. Some of my most sophisticated, senior, amazing financial services friends are working on mainframe retirement projects, right? So we're now at a point where we can choose. Do we want to introduce a new class of mainframe that has the same operating parameters as mainframe, that we're going to hate ourselves for choosing now, that's going to haunt us for the next 30 years of our business? Or do we want to do what Windows, Intel, and ultimately VMware as well did to the world of mainframes? Let's create a ubiquitous environment. It enables COTS software to run anywhere. It levels the playing field. You pick the environment based on the simple operating properties of that. You probably need someone who will help you fit your workload to that environment a little bit, but these environments are becoming very consistent. So that's the first point. It's like, can we get to that world? And the answer is yes, we can. And I don't think it's going to be a single vendor that does that. I don't think a single vendor is going to own that abstraction, nor do I think a single vendor should own that abstraction. I think that abstraction is going to be an open source technology called Kubernetes. And the question is going to be, are vendors helping to make that technology ubiquitous? Are they committed to the vision of a ubiquitous, consistent commodity compute environment that works everywhere? And are they making that accessible to the world of COTS providers or not? And the thing I like about VMware is I really feel their commitment to that. You don't have to own it. You just have to be a part of it. And that really excited me about joining the company.
While talking about joining I remember, when Pat said, that VMware is like Dialtone, and the thing is, people talk about, all these, there are a lot of companies, I think 70 or 80%, they're still on legacy workload. They're still planning to move to cloud. So I mean, using the term Dialtone actually is valid, to be honest. It's not invalid term. But from VMware's perspective, and when you join, VMware, when you see customers who are still on legacy workload and they want to move to the cloud native work, how do you plan to help them?
Well, let me hit on one of the points you brought up earlier in the question. Pat Gelsinger, our CEO, talks about VMware providing infrastructure to our enterprise customers in a very repeatable, very dependable way. And he draws the analogy to kind of old school telephone dial tone. We've been doing that with the VM, the virtual machine, for the 20 years of the company's been in existence. We see a very similar challenge and opportunity to do that with the Kubernetes cluster abstraction. Right? And so when he uses that reference, it's about bringing repeatability, efficiency, dependability to our customers, but the new layer, the new kind of frontier, if you will, is that multi-cloud challenge. 20 years ago, it was multiple x86 servers. 20 years before that, it was different mainframes, right? And so we've seen this evolution a couple of times. We're seeing it start to play out again, further up the stack. The instruction set, if you will, for modern IaaS across different clouds is different than it was for the x86 instruction set, but there are a lot of similarities in terms of the abstraction that needs to be delivered. And I think we're getting the benefit. What the Kubernetes community represents to VMware is the shared learnings and knowledge of the past 20 or even 40 years of technology coming together to solve some of the industry's hardest problems. And VMware is very excited to get involved in that, to participate in that, to bring our areas of expertise that we've developed over the last 20 years of our company's history around the hypervisor and compute virtualization and some of the other areas of storage and networking and management and operations, and bring those back into the community to help our customers on this multi-cloud journey. But at the end of the day, that reference is really about making sure our enterprise customers get something that is dependable, efficient, bulletproof, repeatable, and in this case, now multi-cloud.
Right, excellent. Before we kind of wrap this interview, how much of your technologies will remain open source? What is your open source strategy with Heptio coming into your family?
Great question. So we've been focused, VMware as a company, before bringing Heptio into the mix, we've been focused at slowly but steadily increasing our participation in the Kubernetes community. We've been participating in the Cloud Foundry community for a number of years as well, but we've been slowly upping our participation and our contributions to those community efforts in a number of areas. We're represented in a number of different of the special interest groups, as well as helping much more recently on the release readiness of some of the latest Kubernetes releases. So the team's been hard at work to try to be good members of the community and to contribute back with things that, in areas that we can bring our knowledge and expertise to bear. And with the Heptio team coming in, we expect that to accelerate, to amplify and accelerate. The company's commitment to the work that Heptio is doing in the community will remain and will be extended. I'm very excited to say, and there's some additional projects that we've been thinking about, that the team's been thinking about, that I'm hoping will be very exciting to the community here, potentially this time next year. So I think a lot of good things ahead on that front.
Because now you also have an open source Chief Open Source Officer, Dirk,
Yes.
legendary Dirk. So
Dirk and I, inside of VMware, Dirk and I work very closely together. Dirk is responsible for VMware's kind of overarching open source strategy and participation, and he's been a very active, longtime member of the Linux community. And him and I, since the day he joined VMware, actually, him and I have worked together to make sure that VMware was on a path to become a very good citizen of specifically the Kubernetes community in that open source community. I'm very proud of the team and the work that they've done so far, but I'm looking forward to what we're going to do together over the coming years.
And it's interesting, as my own journey as a journalist, I started covering VMware after Dirk joined, because I've been, friends and covering him for so long. So I was like, okay, let's do the first interview. So after that, I was excited to see how much open source work is going on inside of VMware. So, and I'm also a customer of VMware Fusion. I mean, nothing about product, whatever, but I am really, incredible to see, a lot of work going on, which I was not aware of earlier. So I'm kind of confident, that it will continue and get better. So thanks once again for, talking to me today. And of course, we'll see you again next year.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks for your time.